Good afternoon, all. Today I start with a new session of the Lightning Framework, that is, styling of the components in the Lightning Framework. So, we have already discussed in the previous lectures what is a Lightning Framework. So, when you are styling your components with the Lightning Design System, you need a Salesforce Lightning Design System, that is SLDS. So, this is somewhat similar to a CSS framework that is providing us a feel that is consistent with the lightning experience. Now we are using the SLDS style for our custom lightning web components that are UI based, that is consistent, and that is applicable with the Salesforce without having any of the reverse engineering process in our styles. Now, all these styling works with the lightning components that are working with the lightning experience and also in the Salesforce mobile app. Now we use different base lightning components. We have the base lightning components uh, in the lightning framework where it is using the lightning design system styling. So many of the base components are always built from the SLDS components blueprints. So as you know, blueprint is just a framework that is accessible with the help of HTML as well as the CSS. Now we have the different base components that is providing a class attribute so that I can easily add an SLDS utility class or a custom class to the outer elements of the components. Now, for example, if I want to apply a margin utility class to the lightning button component, we simply use the class SLDS mleft medium. So it will apply the margin to the left side and from the medium area till the left to medium area it will cover the margin. Now this is the template. Firstly, for including the margin in our system, we are forming creating a template. So then I am including a button tool. So the button label is also applied, the submit button, and the title of that particular button will be submit, and then the event that will be generated is on click event, that is handle the submit, and it is linked with the lightning button. So the lightning button variant has a particular brand and the label is the cancel, and then the title is cancel. So we are providing two different buttons, one for the submit button and the another one is the cancel button. So the event that is will be generated is the on click handle cancel event. Now we have included the margin in it, that is SLDS M left medium. So it will include the margin from left to medium value. Then the lightning button is closed because we have included two different types of lightning buttons, that is one for the submit and another one for the cancel. Now when some of the components are providing a variant attribute, so you can directly apply a design variation. Then when you are styling your own components, then you do not need only the CSS classes of the base lightning components. You can use overriding base component styling. So the overriding base component styling is not always supported, but when you are using any of the styling hooks, then this overriding base component is supported. Now when we are using base lightning component design variations and utility classes, w- when I have to change the styling of any of the base lightning components, we are first checking the component reference, and then we are seeing, after checking, we are seeing whether the component has certain design variations or not. If there are certain design variations, then we are changing the spacing of the components such as the alignment, padding, margin, or even if in it if we want to change the typography, we are using this LDSA SU classes. Now we can use the styling hooks to override default style. As I already told you that we cannot use overriding tools in everywhere in the lightning component. We can just use it in styling hooks. So if there are design variations, the utility classes will not be meeting our requirements or the customer requirements. So we have to use the styling hooks there. So how can we apply the custom CSS classes? So if there are global design tokens, so that are not working, so you have to create a custom CSS class instead of overriding an SLDC class. So you are creating a class and then you are using that own class that you have created. You cannot use the already existing class name, and you cannot change any of the class names. So for that you are using the base component internal markup, and we are creating a custom class and then we are passing it to the class attribute. We have the custom components that are existing in the lightning experience as well as the Salesforce mobile application. Then the lightning design system can import any of the static resources. We can use the lightning design system class and implement the HTML element along with it. For this, there is a procedure that is, I can simply write down that I want to create a my custom style. So I'll include my custom style and then I'm providing the padding also, the spacing also. So I'm giving the value of that spacing for the medium, from the medium as 16 pixels, and we can create with the help of this my custom styles. But we cannot use the another code like SLDS button padding 16 pixel. It will give an error. We cannot include it like this. Now we can apply the styling. So my style padding where scoped spacing, you are providing the spacing according to your need, and then you cannot do that. You can directly include the scope notification. You can add the padding where scope spacing here. Then I have the div class, that is the division class that will be included. I'm using it in the CSS styling sheet. So the SLDS, that is the styling lightning scope not notification my style, because I am using the custom style. Then I am writing certain sentences here that will be accepted in the division class. But in the button class, we are not including any of the card, and the margin button is 18 pixel. That is, the pixel information needs to be provided when you are including a margin, when you are creating any of the components. Then we have the body container, then we have the division sidebar and article card also. So this is somewhat similar to the already existing HTML tags or the CSS tags are used here. Then I have to create a custom component from the different base components. So when I have to build a lightning web component, I compose it by combining smaller lightning based components, and then I form a complex custom component. How can we construct a design from the components? Like I can include buttons, I can include drag and drop box, I can include the certain media objects, I can include arrows, I can even include the text box, the labels. Everything can be created with the help of this custom components. So you just have to use the utilities, you have to use the grid and the spacing classes for the layout. Now whenever you want to add a new functionality to the component, you are searching the lightning design system for patterns that will work and apply to all the classes in that are displayed inside the template. For example, I am using the template h1 class SLDS text heading large SLDS example h1. This is the heading I am giving in h1. So then I am giving the div class, then I am printing in a paragraph hello, and then I'm closing the template. So this whole template can be called with the help of the utility classes. Now I have to create a custom component from Lightning Design System Blueprint. So if you are not able to find any of the base component, then you can find the SLDS blueprint, which will help us to build the custom component. So what is a component? Whenever I'm talking about a component, I'm talking about the Lightning Web component. That is based on the UI, and it is including an HTML file as well as the JavaScript file, and the metadata configuration file that is storing all its information. Now this file must use the same name so the framework can auto wire them. The service component or the values or the metadata or the library of the components, this will include a JavaScript file and a metadata configuration file. Now we have the different component folder. To create a component, firstly I'm creating a folder that is bundling your components files. Then the folder and its file must always have the same name, so to avoid the confusion. And then the rules for it are that it should contain certain capitalization of the words, the underscore should also be there. Then I have the my component. So the my component.html, then my component.js, it will support multiple HTML, JavaScript, and the metadata and the CSS file as well as your version file. Then there are certain rules for the folder and the files which have to follow certain naming rules. It should always begin with a lowercase letter. Then it should contain only the alphanumeric or the underscore characters. It should be unique in the namespace. It should not contain the white spaces. It can never end with an underscore. It cannot contain two underscore simultaneously, and it cannot contain a hyphen. Now, whenever I'm talking about the Lightning Web Components, these should match the web standards, and the HTML standard requires that custom elements names should always contain a hyphen. Now, all the Lightning Web components have a certain namespace. So that namespace is separated from a folder name by a hyphen. The name will be same, but it will be separated with a hyphen. Now the component name will always meet the rules of the HTML standard. Now the markup for the Lightning Web component with the folder name widget in the default namespace C. Now the Salesforce platform will not allow the component folder or the file names. So if a component name has more than one word, then you cannot name that folder and the file as my component, my underscore, my hyphen component, but we have to write down in a different way. So you have to use a camel case when you have to write down the component name as my component, when it is having two words in a name of that particular folder. So this camel case component folder will always use to map the values in the markup language. So to refer a component with that folder name, that is my component, you have to write down in the tag, that is C dash my dash component, that is hyphen. Now I have the parent HTML where I am creating a template which is just calling the my component folder, and then the template is closed. So here I am using the hyphen to call the components. You can also use the underscore when I am talking about the component folder name, but they are not mapping to the kbab case in markup. So the names are always legal because the names are separated with the hyphen. So if I do not give the hyphen, if I directly call the name, then it will not be accepted and it will be an error, giving an error. Then we have the component HTML file. So because we are using the UI components, so the UI components will always have an HTML file, and the root tag of that particular template. So we have the service components, the libraries that is not requiring any of the HTML file. I think you all must be aware what is a UI. UI stands for the user interface. So the HTML file will follow the certain naming convention components, that is name.html and my component.html. Then a component HTML file can have maximum size of 128 KB. You can also create an HTML for the Lightning Web Component. So within the template tag, you can create the web components also that will contain the HTML web components. We have the template of HTML and then the my component.html. Then that template will be replace the comment with component HTML and then template is closed. So whenever any component is rendered, then the template tag is replaced with the name of that particular component which I want to call, that is the namespace hyphen component hyphen name. For example, in the browser console, my component render as C my component, where C is the default namespace. Now we have the HTML spec mandate, that is tag for custom elements. Here I have declared with C underscore todo when the hyphens are not closing by itself. Then we are using this type of item. Then we have the component JavaScript file. These are the components that are including in the Lightning Web styling sheet. So we have the JavaScript file also. So now here when we are talking about the component of a JavaScript file, so whenever a component is rendering the UI, the user interface, so the JavaScript file will define the HTML element. So if the components is a service component or the library, the JavaScript file will export functionality for the other components also for its purpose or for its use. So the JavaScript file in the Lightning Web Components or are ES6 modules. So everything declared in a module is a local module. It is scoped to the module. Now when I have to import a class, function or a variable declared in a module, we are simply using the import statement. Now we are allowing other code also that can use the class, function or the variable declared in a module. So we can use the export statement. Now we have a components Java file that is having a file size of 128 KB. Then we have the UI component, the user interface component. So the JavaScript file will always follow certain naming conventions that is used in HTML also and the CSS also. So whenever I'm talking about JavaScript, so it will use the component name.js, that is the extension. And every UI component will always include a JavaScript file which is having at least this code. Now import lightning element from LWC, lightning web component. LWC is lightning web component. Then we have to export default class by component extends lightning element. Here I am including the different lightning elements which will include the UI components. So because we want to include the UI component, so we have to also include the lightning element along with it. So the core module in lightning web components is LWC. So the import statement, import lightning element from the LWC module. We have the import lightning element from LWC. Now lightning element is a custom element or the wrapper element of the HTML element. We can also extend this lightning element which will include the JavaScript class also along with the UI component. You I cannot even do that if I want to create a class, any other class, and then that class will extend and create a lightning web component. That is not possible with the UI components. So we have to export. For that purpose we have to export the default class, and that default class will have certain naming properties, naming standard that will extending the lightning element, and then you can include the different codes there after that. Then we have the export default keywords that will export a my component class for other components that will be useful. Now we have the class that is by default export for the UI components. Now I can export other variables or other functions also in the UI component that are not supported. Then we have the Java file that can contain the components public API also, where the public properties and methods are applied, and you have to use @API to access that JavaScript file. So you have the certain fields, you have certain event handlers associated with the JavaScript file. So you have the UI component folder that will also include certain JavaScript file and the my component JS file along with it. The code in these files will have the component's own use, and it cannot be made public or it cannot be shared to any other class or the components. Then we have the service components. So whenever I want to share certain codes between the components, we have to create an ES6 module that will allow us to export the functions, to export the methods or the variables. And then an ES6 module is definitely a file that will export functionalities that other modules can also use. Then the modules are helpful in making it easier to maintain our code. Then we have the component configuration file. So when I'm talking about the component file, so every component my file is having a configuration file. So the configuration file will define the all the information related to the metadata rules. And then the configuration file is following the naming convention as well. It will include all the configuration related to the file as well as the components that are used in that particular folders. And then we have the configuration file. Then I have an XML version of 1.0. I can also include the XML as well as the HTML. And then the API version, the API is exposed false. The lightning component bundle are also included in the configuration file. So you can have multiple configuration related to the file, the version, the component information, the API version information. All these information are stored in the configuration file. Then we have the component CSS file. So the component CSS file is included in in the Lightning framework. You can use the different CSS syntax to style Lightning web components. Now to when I have to style a component, I am creating a style sheet in the component bundle. So with the same name as the component. So if the component is called my component, the style sheet is my component.css. This will also have the minimum size of 128 KB. Now, if I want to share the CSS style between the different components that are included in the Web Lightning style sheets, so we have to create a module that will contain only the CSS file along with the configuration file. Then here I am importing the module into the CSS file of Lightning Web Components. Then we have the component SVG icon. So this component SVG icon, it is a resource where we are using the custom icon when we are using uh, when we are using it to develop a Lightning App Builder and the Experience Builder. So I have to include an SVG resource as a custom icon for your component. Then you have your component folder name. Then you are providing the extension .svg. Whenever the component is called, the component name is my component, then the extension is for that svg is dot the name of that component as well as the extension .svg. You can only have one svg per different files and the folders. Then we have additional JavaScript files. So in this addition, that it will create an HTML element as well as the component folder that will contain the JavaScript files. So these type of JavaScript file structure code in UI components, and it will share code from service components. We have the JavaScript file that will support the ES6 modules and can also have the names that are unique with the component folders. So we have the different files that are stored in our component folders, that is the HTML file, the JS file, the metadata file, CSS style sheet file, then some utility files as well. Then we can have multiple other utility files that are supported with the JavaScript file. You can import the certain main JavaScript files components. Now we have the component test. Now whenever I have to create a test for a component, I am creating a folder that can be named as test, that will be placed at the top level of the component folder, and then I am saving the test inside the test folder. Then I am just test will run the JavaScript file in the test directory, and then test files will have the names that end in .js, and then we are recommending that the test ends in the .test.js. Now you can have a single test file with all the component tests. You can have multiple files to organize related tests. Then test files can be placed in a subfolder. Then I have the component namespaces. So every component should have a namespace. Whenever I want to refer a component, I am providing the code along with the default namespace, that is C. So the C is the code, is the namespace where the code is executing in org or in without a namespace, or in a managed package or in an unmanaged package. Now whenever I'm talking about an HTML template, when I have to refer to a component in the lightning space, I'm using the lightning component name. A hyphen character is separating the namespace from the component name. Then I have the use component example from different namespaces. So this is the example that is using the default namespace C. It is referencing the C contact tile. That is a custom component in the project. So I have the composition basics.html, then the template, then lightning card title, then composition basics, then I have the icon name, and then the custom 57. Then I have the division class that is included in the SLDS. Then I have the title, the tile for that, the contact, C contact tile contact, then the tile is closed, then the lightning card is closed, and then the template is also closed. So whenever inside a JavaScript we want to refer to a module, we add a namespace or a module. The forward slash character will separate the namespace from the module name. So example is here, I am importing a lightning element from the LWC. Then I am writing down import my name export from C backslash common utilities, that is utils, and then I'm importing my default export from C common utils, and then I'm exporting the default class that is extending the lightning element. Now I have the different namespace considerations. So for these guidelines, a custom Lightning Web Component is not accessing a Lightning Web Component or a module in a custom namespace when it is running in an organization that isn't using the Lightning Locker instead of Lightning Web Security. So I can also access Lightning Web Components on the modules only in the C, that is the code, that is default code that is generated, and the Lightning namespace when it is executing in an org that is using the Lightning Locker instead of the Lightning Web Security. So we have a custom Lightning Web component and a custom Aura component in the same namespace that have the same name, whether the components are running in an organization with the Lightning Locker or with the Lightning Web enabled security. Then I have the HTML templates. So the power of Lightning Web Components in the template system, which uses the virtual DOM to render the components, and then I'm using a template, that is root tag from the HTML template, and I can also use the nested template of the HTML tag that is working with the different directories. Then I have the different HTML templates. So I have to use the standard HTML, and then the few directives are also implemented that is unique to the Lightning Web Components. So when a component is rendering the template tag, it is replaced with the help of the name of the component. So I am providing, simply writing the namespace hyphen component hyphen name. So the name of that particular component is included, that is my component.html. Then the template. Then I have the div class, that is SLDS, and then the template is closed. Now I have a browser console, a component with the template my component.html, that is rendering my C hyphen my hyphen component, where C is defined as the default namespace, C underscore my underscore component, then div class again included with the SLDS. I am simply writing hello world, and then I am closing my component. So HTML template will also render data to the DOM. You have to simply syntax to declare bind a components template to data in the components JavaScript class. Now I have the nested templates. So whenever I have to, a template can include nested template tags with directories. So the directives are simply HTML attributes like LWC, if, or, for each. Now which you have to give more power to manipulate the DOM in the markup. Now I have the nested template tags, that is including one of the following, that is for each, iterator name, LWC, if else, or true or false. Now instead of using the class attribute on a nested template, I am using the class attribute on a div or a span tag. So if I'm using a VS Code, I have to install the Salesforce extension pack. This extension flag will be incorrect code while you type, which is helpful when working with the template directives. Now there is a data binding in a template. So binding properties in a components template to properties in the component JavaScript class. So in the template, I am surrounding the property with curly braces without spaces, and then I am computing a value for that property. I am using a JavaScript getter in the JavaScript class. Then I am getting the property. Then in the template, the property can be a JavaScript identifier or a dot notation that accesses a property from an object. The LWC is not allowing us to compute expressions like person1 or person2 dot name John. So a property used in a template should contain a primitive value except when used in a for each or iterator directive. Now this is the example of binding the component template properties to Java script properties. To follow along a code editor, I am opening the hello binding and the hello expression components from the github.com and the Trailhead apps. The LWC recipes are also provided. You can also use the code from the web components.dev/create/LWC. So you have the simple example of data binding. Then I have a JavaScript class, hello HTML, then template, hello, then greeting, then template. Then we are taking the example of this. So now we are taking a example of hello JavaScript. So we are importing the lightning element from LWC, that is your lightning web component, and then I'm exporting the default hello class, that is extending the lightning element, and then I'm adding greeting is equals to world. So the property that is displayed inside the curly braces should be a valid JavaScript identifier or a member expression. Likewise, for example, data and the data name, both the things are valid. You can never add a spaces around the property, because the thing that you are displaying or the attribute that you are displaying inside the curly braces will not be ever represented by a space. So it can never be a valid HTML code. So the lightning input field always uses the onChange attribute to listen for a change to its value. So when the value is changing, so the handle change function in the JavaScript file will execute. To bind the handle change function to the template, we use the same syntax as the handle change template syntax. So here I am binding the values and changing the function. So template is generated and I am adding greeting along with hello in the paragraph. Then I am giving the input name, label name, then value, then change, then lightning input, and then template. Now when we are talking about event handling so in JavaScript class, the handle change is passed in an event object. So here in JavaScript, we are using handle change to pass an event object, and the event object is containing the information about the changing event, the event which we have to change. The component always uses the event object that will get the value that the user entered into the input field. So here I am using hello binding.js. That JS is the JavaScript extension. Then I am importing the lightning element from LWC, that is your lightning web component. So lightning element is the major feature which you are importing, because without which without adding this lightning element, you cannot bind any of the data or the component into the lightning element. And then you are adding world, greeting is equals to world, and then handle change is used to handle the event. The event handling technique is done with the help of handle chain, that is event. Then this dot greeting, this greeting is called by this statement, then target value is generated. So all the code is a standard HTML and the JavaScript code. Now we are getting the use getters instead of expressions. So whenever I want to get a value for a property, we are using the JavaScript getter. If I want to convert the name of all the uppercase letters, I am using a getter function in the JavaScript class. So getters are the powerful tool that expression, because they are JavaScript functions. So getters are also enabled unit testing, that is helping us to reduce the bugs, and we are defining the getter inside the value of a JavaScript class. So I'm simply getting the property name and I can access it from the template. So a user enters their first and the last name. Here also this is an example where I have created a template, and that template is including the lightning input name. The first name is included, and then the label also first name. Then I want to change the event. That is, I want to handle change. So the lightning input name is again changed to last name, and then label is last name. So handle changes, changing the event from the first name to the last name, and then uppercase full name. Then the template is closed. So the handle change function will set the first name and the last name properties that the user enters. Now this is a value. This is again an example for your lightning element from the LWC. Again, I am exporting the class hello expression and then extending the lightning element. I'm adding certain value in the first name and the last name also. Then handle change is used to for event handling. Then I am declaring a constant field which is used to generate an event of a target name. Then I'm checking if the field has a first name value, then I simply call the first name. Else, if there is no first name, then I check the last name field and then I get the value of that last name. So now when we are using the render DOM elements conditionally, so for rendering the HTML, I am adding the LWC else if property else directive to a nested template tag that encloses the conditional content. Directives are special HTML attributes. The LWC if else if directives bind property to the template, removing and inserting DOM elements are always based on whether the data is true or whether the data is false. So now we have two different properties, property 1 and property 2. So I am checking the LWC property if condition is applied. If property 1 is true, then the template will show the statement 1. Otherwise, it will move on to the statement 2 and the template will be getting closed. Else, I am using if else. So the third statement will be the default statement. If the property 1 and property 2 are not true, then we are moving to the statement 3. So we have provided only two properties. The statement 3 is the default statement. So three of the statement will be rendered true or false. Now again the hello condition rendering is generated. Here the lightning card title is given, then rendering is shown, then icon name is shown, then the division class is shown. Then I am adding the input type, that is I am adding the checkbox and I am assigning a label to that particular checkbox. Then an event handler is generated which is used to check if the details are visible to the user or not. Checkbox is visible to the user or not. So these details should be a valid detail and the template get closed and the lightning card also closes and the template also closes. So the JavaScript is not able to manipulate the DOM. So it is used only to change the value of the particular property. Then I have the different render list. So whenever I want to render a list of items, so I use for each statement or for each directive for iterating over an array. So for each is very much similar to the for statement. Here in for each statement, I am not knowing the total number of existence of the element. So for that place, we are using for each statement. We are adding a directive to a nested template tag and then I am enclosing the HTML elements. Then I am using the iterative directory which will get the first and the last property that you have applied earlier in an array. Now for each statement, when you are using the for each statement directive, you are using it for the current item or the current data, then you can easily access the item index, you can easily access the assignment to that particular index value. You can check the key value that is assigned to the element that you have added in your template, in that nested template or in a simple template. Then this will iterate over the array, and then there is an example of hello world for each hello for each .htm. So whenever you are using a custom element and then you are rendering those element list inside a for each loop, you are using then ul, that is ul is your unordered list class. So in unordered list class, you are not aware what all item are there, what all contacts are there, how many number. You are not knowing the quantity of the contacts. You are not knowing the item numbers. So here you are using the unordered list. Then again you are linking that the list with the key values. So I am providing the list with the ID that is linked with the contact name as well as the contact title. Then the JavaScript code is also generated, which is helping us to linking the lightning element with the contacts of the array elements that were created, that is the ID, the name, the title. We can have multiple IDs, we can have multiple names and the titles in our array that was created in the lightning platform or in the HTML code on the lightning platform. Here now we have the different iterators. Now if we want to apply something different or iterative nature to the array, you are using the iterative director on a template tag. So for using the iterative name, I have three different properties: the value, index, first and the last. So the value of the item in the list, this will help to provide the access to the properties of the array. Then we have the index of the item. Then the first value is a boolean value, that is indicating which item is the first item in the list. And the last one is a boolean value indicating whether this item is the last item in the list. Now we have a different code that is using the same array, and it is applying the special rendering to the first and the last items in the list. So the code is using the first and the last properties with the LWC if directive. So if the item in the first list is that there, then the division tag renders which styling scheme will be applied in the CSS list first class. So if there is an item in the last list, then the division tag will again render the same CSS styling to the last item. So we are generating the template and the lightning card title also given. I am giving the icon name, then unordered list is formed, then the listing of the key and the binding of the key with the contact value or the iterator is there. Then after that we are closing the list and the template and the unordered list, and then last one is the lightning card. So this will generate the first link and the border. The border top will be represented in the pixel and the padding top will also be represented in the pixel format. So you have multiple values. Then we have render multiple templates. Now if you want to render a component with more than one component or the more than one is CSS style sheet, then you don't want to mix that in HTML, you want to keep it in separate files. So you have to keep the version of the component and another version of the component as image and extra text, and then you can import the multiple HTML templates and write business logic. And then you can have a component that can render multiple templates. You can also use the else if statement, the if statement. You can also create multiple HTML files with the help of this multiple render templates. So this is the example of executing the multiple templates in the rendering in the lightning element. So template 1 and template 2 are generated in the HTML code, and then I am exporting this multiple templates and extending the lightning element. Then if one template is true, then I am rendering this template to the another template, and then I am switching between the templates. This is showing us the example of the margin of the template 1 and the margin of the template 2, and then I am applying all the CSS style sheet to both the values, and then I on click event is generated or a button is generated which is used to switch between the two templates, whether I want to use the template 1 or I want to use the template 2. So you have for using these two templates, we are accessing via the CSS style sheet or CSS file name. Then we are having style components with lightning design system. So this SLDS is a CSS framework that is allowing us to give the custom lightning web components the UI that is consistent with the Salesforce, and then we can use base lightning components. Base lightning components are providing us the namespace that is helping us in the lightning design system styling. It is used as HTML and CSS both. These are the templates that can be created. We can add button, we can add a variant to that button, we can add a label to that button, we can add a title, and I can also attach an event handler, that is an on click event is generated on as soon as you click on the button you will get a handle cancel. Then you have base lightning component design variations and utility classes. So if you want to change the styling of a base lightning component, you are first checking the component reference, and then you are changing the variations of that design. Then you are adding the spacing of the component, you can aligning them, you are adding padding to the component, you can also add margins. So you can use different styling hooks to override default styles. So you can apply custom CSS classes. So if you don't have a global token, so you can create a custom CSS class in spite of overriding an SLDS classes. Now you can create a class instead of targeting a class name. Then you can custom component, then you can add those CSS to an HTML element by adding padding to the custom styles, and spacing also is applied. Then you are adding your styling, you can add your style, you can customize your style, you can you can add a button, and then you are calling a button with respect to a particular button. You can adding a card, lightning card, with the help of button. You can add margin, you can give the pixel information about the margin. Then you can create custom components from base components. So you need to build a lightning web component, and then you have to compose it by combining various smaller lightning based components and make it more complex, and you can provide as many number of components combined into one. So this will help you to design from components like you can have check boxes, you can have buttons, you can have radio buttons, you can have different media objects, you can have graphs, you can have your smart arts. All these things can be added in your custom components from the base components. So you can use the utilities, and you can grid and space classes for the layout. You can add new functionality. So you can use the utility class to change your header size or padding to your device div containers. So now you can create custom component from lightning design system blueprint. So when you're creating a component on SLDS blueprint, so you need to find the SLDS blueprint to help you to create your own custom component. So firstly you have to assume that the list of available base components you need to refer is not available in the component reference, and you cannot customize. So to build a component from the SLDS blueprint, you have to search the SLDS blueprint catalog, and then you will find the closest design that you want to customize for your component, and then according to that you will have a corresponding base component. and this lightning component button in the top right of the page. So every blueprint will provide you the details for the device support. Then you can have the table, data table as SLDS blueprint. Then you can also start from the base variation. You can create a scope notification. You can know that if you are a corresponding, if you are having a corresponding lightning web component, then you can easily develop for it. But if there is no lightning web component corresponding to it, then you need to create a scope notification. For that, you have to start with the base variations on the SLDS blueprint, and then you have to build from there. So you need to provide the copy and paste the responsive base variation markup into your template. So you can have your div, then class, then SLDS scope notification, SLDS media, SLDS media center, SLDS scope notification. All these class nodes are being provided. Then the role of that particular class is provided. Then you can span of that particular class is provided. The SVG values provided. The link or the reference is also provided for the particular class, and then you are closing the div, and then you are creating the paragraph, and you are adding the reference to the JavaScript. These are the example of the templates where you are creating your lightning icon, and you are providing the name, also you are providing the alternative text, the size of that particular class, the icon class, and then you can have the media body, also you can have the paragraph, you can have the tables inside the that particular class icon. Then we have the component JavaScript file that is helping us to bind the message to the template. So you are adding the lightning icon with the help of the JavaScript file. Then I have to create styling themes and variations. So the scope notification blueprint will always include different themes, whether it is a light theme or the dark theme. You can use the function to return to the class name, and then you can choose the theme. So you need to import the lightning element API, then export the class for which you are creating the styling themes. So you need to extend the lightning element, then you are providing the API message, then you are providing the API theme, then you are getting the scope notification, then you are getting the class name, the theme name, the theme can be accessed with the help of this method. So if I want a light theme, then I am just calling the light theme, and then I am providing the name for it, then the notification light. And if I am choosing a dark theme, then I am providing a notification dark. That is all for today. So tomorrow, this is the last lecture of your Salesforce technology. So tomorrow you will have your quizzes, your validatory session, and if by chance the ILA is not working, then the time limit of that quiz will be exceeded. So the quizzes will be provided to you tomorrow or day after tomorrow on Monday. You have to attempt it, and the assignments need to be completed till the coming Saturday, so that the certificates can be distributed to you. Online certificates will be generated after you complete all the modules and quizzes, and all the notes will be provided to you on the INI. That is all. Thank you. And I'll inform the timing for the validity session for tomorrow. Thank you.